The Thunderbird is one of the most popular Native American motifs in all of North American art, but there's not much information about it in literature. Most of what we know about the Thunderbird comes from the Hopi, Navajo, Lakota, Cheyenne, and Apache peoples. But the Thunderbird appears with different names among many other tribes. There are many stories about the Thunderbird, and most of them involve the same general concepts like bravery, strength, and power. But there is another important story that doesn't get told very often. A story about the dance of the Stormbird and how its power shook the world. It is called Thunderbird Storm Dance. Long ago on the wide open plains, the people lived in harmony with nature. They were especially fascinated by the sky, the clouds, the rain, and the thunder. They had no idea what caused these phenomena, but they knew that something great must be at work. And every time a storm rolled over the plains, they would come out into the open fields and watch in awe as the sky unfolded before their eyes. The first thing they saw was the wind. It would start off gentle and playful, ruffling the grass and dancing with the trees, but then it would pick up speed until it was a raging torrent that could knock a man off his feet and send him sprawling across the ground. The villagers didn't understand why the wind blew or why it suddenly changed from calm to wild, but they knew that it was alive, that it had a spirit, and that spirit was the first sign that the great sky being was stirring. Then they watched the clouds gather, dark and heavy, rolling across the horizon like an approaching army. There was nowhere for them to hide. They could only stand there and wait. Then the first drops of rain fell from the sky, hitting the ground and sending up tiny geysers of mud. At first it was just a light rain, but then the sky opened up and the water came down in sheets. It poured and poured until the rivers overflowed and the valleys were filled with water. The people didn't understand where the rain came from or why it fell so hard, but they knew that it was part of the sky's dance, and they watched as the deluge transformed the landscape around them. And finally, they heard the sound. A deep, resonant boom that seemed to shake the very earth beneath their feet. It started off distant, like a rumble in the far-off mountains, but then it grew louder and louder until it was right overhead. The people didn't know what caused this mighty noise, but they knew that it was the voice of the sky spirit, and they stood there in the pouring rain and listened as the thunder crashed and boomed above them. They watched the dance of the sky spirit for hours, and when it was finished, they knew that everything around them had been changed by its power. The wind had swept away the old leaves and replaced them with new growth. The rain had washed the dirt from their fields and made the crops grow tall and strong. And the thunder had chased away the evil spirits that had been hiding in the hills. They felt cleansed and renewed, and they knew that the sky spirit was watching over them, protecting them, and helping them to grow. From that day on, the people made sure to honor the sky spirit in their daily lives. They performed ritual dances to mimic the wind, the rain, and the thunder. And at night, when their children were afraid of the darkness, they would sing songs of the Stormbird and its dance, and the thunderous booms became a lullaby that lulled them to sleep. Now, this story of the sky dancer has been told and retold so many times that even people who do you not know much about Native American culture have heard it in some form or another. Some versions of the story say that the sky dancer is a good spirit that brings rain and thunder to help the people and the animals. Other versions say that it is a trickster spirit that causes storms just for fun. But no matter what version you hear, the basic message is the same. The sky dancer is a powerful force of nature that should be respected. But in the days after the storm, when the sun came back out and the skies were clear, the people noticed something strange. The sky was full of giant birds, hundreds and hundreds of them, all circling and diving and swooping through the air. These birds were unlike any they had ever seen before. They were huge, with long, sharp beaks, and talons that could tear a man to pieces. Their feathers were the color of the storm clouds, and their cries echoed the sound of thunder. The people were terrified, but they couldn't run away. The birds were everywhere. They blocked the sun and the moon, and their shadows fell over the land like a second darkness. And then the birds landed. They landed in the trees, and on the rooftops, and in the fields, and they stared at the people with their sharp black eyes. The people thought they were going to be torn apart, but the birds just stood there and watched, and then, slowly, they began to dance. They danced in circles and in lines, and they flapped their wings and screeched and howled. And the people realized that they weren't trying to scare them or hurt them. They were just dancing. And as the birds danced, the people joined in. They danced with the birds, and they felt the wind beneath their feet and the rain on their skin and the thunder in their hearts. And they knew that the birds weren't just dancing. They were singing the song of the storm. And the people danced with the birds all night long. And when the sun came up the next morning, they were gone. The birds had flown away and the sky was clear and blue again. But the people remembered the dance, and every year when the storms came, they danced again. They danced to honor the birds and to remember the storm that had passed. One of the best things about Native American storytelling is the way that stories can blend together and overlap each other. This story of the Thunderbird and the Storm Dance has elements of other stories that we've told here on this channel, like the story of the Thunderbird stealing the salmon from the sky, or the story of the Thunderbird bringing rain to the Hopi. But it also sets up other stories that haven't been told yet, like the story of the two-headed snake that lives in the mountains, or the story of the water monster that lives in the deep waters of the lakes. All of these stories are connected, and they all build on each other, creating a rich tapestry of myth and legend that has been passed down for generations. As we continue to explore Native American mythology, we will see these connections and how they all fit together to form a greater whole. So, keep watching to find out what happens next in the never-ending story of the first people. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Native American mythology. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any information about this story or any other Native American stories, please share it in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Now I want to tell you about our podcast, which is dedicated to exploring the many different creation stories that indigenous cultures have shared for generations. I tell the myths and legends of the Navajo, Hopi, Cherokee, Apache, and many other indigenous cultures, and I try my best to share them respectfully and accurately. You can listen to an episode right now. Just search for our podcast on your favorite podcast app. Also be sure to check out our social media pages where you can find even more information about Native American mythology. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.